Okay, if you've just joined us, welcome to Scéalta. And can I remind you that Scéalta is a joint product between Fáilte Fierce here and Feeling Bubble. And over this last number of weeks, what we've tried to do with Scéalta is to bring you a diversity of people in different walks of life. Our guest this morning, I have to say, is one of the busiest people on the island of Ireland. She is a friend of mine. She's someone who I have learned a lot from. And she is Deirdre Hargey. And she is the Minister of Communities. Deirdre, welcome to Scéalta.
Thank you very much, Joe. Delighted to be here. And good to see you.
Can I ask you this? Do you ever wake up in the mornings and go, is somebody having a laugh? Is this a joke? And let me explain that so that our listeners and our viewers can understand. A while back, of course, you were the Mayor of Belfast, a very successful Mayor of Belfast. You were the first female Sinn Féin Mayor in the history of the city. You were a Mayor a couple of days, and Primark went on fire. And the heart of the city had to be restructured, had to be reprogrammed. I seen you firsthand, and it was literally doing everything except getting up the ladder along with a fireman. It was coordinating meetings, trying to get financial relief, trying to get tax relief, getting planning going, doing all of it. We move on from there, you become a minister. And congratulations, and I have to say, no better person for it. But you're doing that a couple of hours, we have a pandemic. Is this just you, or is this the way the cards have fallen?
Well, people were slagging me about this over the last couple of weeks because my 30th birthday, I was 40 2 weeks ago, on my 30th birthday, the ash cloud came and I couldn't go away with my friends. And then my 40th birthday, we're in the midst of a pandemic, so I had to have it in lockdown. So I suppose it wasn't called Deirdre of the Sorrows for nothing. My daddy loved Celtic mythology, that's what he named me, but I wouldn't change it for the world.
I have had the pleasure of working with you, and I have to say it was a pleasure. It absolutely was a pleasure. But for people who wouldn't necessarily understand the lifestyle or the workload of someone like yourself, you know, sometimes when people talk about being a minister, they conjure up this image of big houses in the country and chauffeur-driven cars and a whole host of secretaries. I know that's not you. You're very much a hands-on person. So first of all, how difficult was it when the job as a minister was quote-unquote normal? And what has it become like now?
Well, I think for me, I've always seen myself as an activist. I've been a community activist my whole life. I'm a political activist. And I see the two roles very much interlinked in terms of improving quality of life. I'm very much working class. I'm very proud of my roots. I live in the community that I was born and bred in the market. And I will always live here. I'm never going to leave this community. It's a community I love, and it's made me who I am as a person, and it also keeps you grounded. And when you have a strong family as well, who are very much rooted in class politics, Republican politics, they keep you grounded also, and particularly your siblings. So I have 3 brothers and 3 sisters. So it's been a roller coaster. Obviously I was in council, Belfast City Council. I was there almost 10 years. I was there in January. I then became an MLA on the Thursday. The political agreement was struck on the Friday morning, and then on Saturday for the restoration of the institutions, I was then asked that morning by Michelle, would I become the minister? So it has been crazy couple of months, and then obviously, yes, the biggest global pandemic in our lifetime has struck the globe, and indeed struck Ireland on a scale that we haven't seen before. And obviously that's threw me in at the deep end in some ways. But you just have to get stuck in. I've always been an activist. I've always put the work in. I always look at the interests of people, and particularly communities in which I come from. And I suppose that's what motivates me to do the work that I'm doing. You have a responsibility. You're now in this position of responsibility, and you have to do it to deliver for everybody. So that's kind of been my focus. It's terrifying. There's no point in saying that it's not, but you just have to always keep yourself focused on why it is you do what you do.
And if we could return maybe to that personal influence in your life, of course, is your mother and father. Primarily they're the people. And I knew your father and I know your mother. And, they are absolutely over the moon, so proud of you. Your mother is so careful around you insofar as she wants to wrap you in cotton wool. And that's probably what most mothers do. For those that don't know you, those who see you, for instance, on TV, see you in political discussions, they see you in debates, they may be surprised to know that you're quite a shy person. And outside of politics, you're not forceful, you're not abrasive, you're not someone who needs to be noted in the room. From a personal point of view, what do you do? Do you go up a gear? What moves you forward?
I am shy. Probably my family and friends know that. The people that I've grew up with my whole life. But I think when you're doing this work, when you're involved in politics or even community activism, I suppose it's the drive to improve the quality of life around you, and lifting the communities up in which you live and in which you work. And you want a better outcome for people. And I suppose that's what motivates you. You nearly take on like a different role. I mean, I'm not comfortable in the media or in the spotlight, or I often stand at the back of a room. I don't push myself forward. But you're an activist as well, so that means that you obviously have to lead in some ways. And I don't know, you just do it because you have to. It's work that you have to do. So it's just like, I played camogie years ago. And obviously, you push yourself out when you're part of a team. And probably this is no different in many ways. I'm part of a bigger team, whether that's in Sinn Féin, whether that's in the community, whether that's within the institutions. And you have to work to deliver the best that you can for people.
I listen occasionally to some of the media, some section of the media, and we shouldn't tar all of the media with the same brush. But they would have it that for instance, the executive and the ministers that make up the executive, and I know there's a confidentiality, and I wouldn't for a second be asking you to breach that. But it just strikes me that there's an obvious working relationship that there. People have their views, they have opinions which they promote. In the interest of us all, it's not a fight every day. It's not a battle every day. It's a discussion. I would take it. Is that a fair assessment?
No, I think people from their own perspectives are there to deliver a mandate that they feel that they've got, to deliver on, I suppose, the principles or the values that they hold. I suppose what makes ours unique is that we are in a 5-party executive. Our island is partitioned, so there's obviously a contested space here in terms of the future and where that lies for people. And so there's obvious tensions that would exist there. But I think, any other, I suppose, society where there were 5 different political parties forming a government, it probably wouldn't last in many other situations. Obviously, we have a peace process, you have a peace agreement, you have political institutions as a result of that. And we know that a consequence of not having politics, it creates a vacuum. What that vacuum does, particularly for young people. And I heard Danny in his talk last week in terms of the interests of young people, issues of mental health. So again, we have a responsibility to make power sharing work, to move through the political issues that may be there. And at times that's opposite, not just on the constitutional issue, but also on left or right politics, because not everyone, I'm on the left, I'm a socialist, I'm a Republican. Not everyone around that table is the same. And so therefore that causes tensions. But we do work, in the interest. I think through this pandemic, despite some of the hiccups along the way, people are trying to work in the interests of communities, are trying to ensure that we reduce the risk to public health. And trying to look at where we go to after this recovery period in terms of moving into the recovery period, the type of society we want. And I think if this pandemic has showed anything, it has to be a society that's inclusive, that's based on the rights and equality, including economic and social rights, and the protections for really value on our frontline essential services, and public services at that as well. So it's a struggle at times, but I think everyone's there to do the best that they can.
Did your year of office in the City Hall as mayor, and I have to say that for you, the job of mayor wasn't simply a ceremonial role. You seen yourself very much as driving the values of the city and awakening the awareness of a city. But did that year in any way prepare you for what you deal with now on a daily basis?
I think definitely. I mean, I suppose the public facing end of it, which is a bit that I've always been uncomfortable with in terms of press and media. I mean, because when you become the mayor, that's what you're doing constantly. You know, you're I suppose promoting and being the face of the city. So it has been good. My experience in Belfast City Council, I mean, we've come through some tense period. We've come through periods of investment in communities, and that's been a learning curve for me as well. The biggest experience when I was mayor, I mean, what I loved the most was meeting people. So when I'm in a conversation with people in a small group or in a meeting or at an event, that's what I love the most. And I suppose for me, moving into the ministry, I mean, the Department of Communities would have definitely been the department of me, because it's for people, and that's always been a focus for me, is engaging with people and trying where I can to improve the quality of life for communities, and particularly those socially deprived and working class communities.
I have to give people maybe an insight just into that year of mayor. One of the things that you've done, unlike any other mayor before or since, you created a charter, the Mayor's Charter, a programme of aspirational ideas for our great city of Belfast. And the charter and the production of the charter, much to Jim Gibney's dismay, should have taken perhaps a week or 2 weeks, and it in fact took nearly 3 months, because every other day you found another cause to add a line of their reviews or their needs to the charter. And you know, I go around looking for recipes for cream buns. Do you go around looking for causes to fight?
No, I mean, I think I wanted to get the charter right. I wanted to make sure I engaged with people. I wanted it to be a legacy that remained within the council. So for me, it wasn't just showing up and taking a photo to say I've produced a charter. I wanted to embed something and to make a difference. And that's the approach that I've always done. I mean, I'm not perfect. I'm not a shining light, but I put the work in. So I do the work if I'm serious about an issue, and I'll research it and I'll put the work in to understanding what the issue is. And I wanted to take the time when I was doing the charter to engage with the groups and with the campaigns in terms of all of the rights issues that impact. And I suppose, I mean, I grew up in a family, you touched on my mummy and daddy, they were involved in the civil rights movement and the creation of that movement. They were Republicans growing up in a working class community in Belfast. They had a real class conscience as well. James Connolly being a hero when you come down our stairs in the morning, that's the photo that you're met with, is my daddy's photo of Connolly that he got in 1969. And so that has always been there for me in terms of that strong conscience and work around rights, around equality, around improving campaigns that I've been involved in the community I live in the market, around regeneration, around housing, around play spaces for young people. So they're the issues that I've grew up in. I mean, I didn't get my politics at university. I got it in the community in which I live. I got it from the campaigns that I've been involved in before I was a councillor or mayor, during being the councillor and mayor, and subsequently after being a minister. I'm still involved in those street-based campaigns, grassroots mobilisations. And that's for me the difference. I mean, that's why I would call myself an activist, a political activist, more so than a politician, because it is about obviously changing at a policy level, and that's why I decided to become a councillor, because you have to change policy and strategy and where resources go, but you can't forget your roots and your the grassroots either, and your activism really shapes you and keeps you grounded as well.
I have to say that one of the highlights for many Belfast, for any mayors anywhere, it would be the inauguration, the ball, the dinner that says, you're now officially the mayor. And the mayor's office is a very formal setting. The people who are the staff are allegedly to call you mayor, and they address you as mayor. There are people who drive the cars to take you to the appointments. There are those who prepare the rooms for it. And I know you appreciate it, each and every one of them. But that community identification I saw at its very best that night. So what you had, of course, was you had civic society right across the city of Belfast, people who would be the captains of industry, people who would be the academics and all of that. Then you had the real important people, the people from the market, who you brought. As you keep saying, they're my mates, get them a drink. You know, and the association, they weren't there to see the mayor. They were there to do a wee party with Deirdre. And that relationship that you were able to maintain with those people, you're right. It is what keeps you and us all sane. So tell me, when you became a minister, what was their response?
No, well, I mean, any great community, any great city or town or place is made by its people. And I have a very strong community background. I mean, I love the area that I've grew up in, that I still live in. It's made me what I am. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the community that I've had all of my experience in, and the people who come from this area that have really shaped me as a person. So I'm indebted to this community, and I will always be indebted, and that's why I'll never leave it. I'm very proud of it being a working class community, and we have a strong sense of our class identity. Living in the market and just the history, I mean, we're celebrating Market 200 years of this community. We were to have a year-long event, but obviously the pandemic has put that on hold until we can organise it again. So we're like one family in ways. I mean, it's not to say there's not problems in the community, but we are a family when times get tough. This community, like many communities in Belfast and beyond, pull together and support one another. And I suppose in terms of becoming the mayor, I wanted to share that with the community in which I grew up in, with my friends, with my neighbours, with community activists who work with me in terms of trying to improve the quality of life. And I thought the funny bit was when Mary Lou called it the markets, and she got a gulder from the floor saying it's the market. That was a real sense of pride for me.
Yeah.
And, you know, so it was part of the crack there. I suppose moving on to this role, I mean, the community has supported me, not just by obviously electing me over nearly the last 10 years, but they have really stood with me in terms of campaigns. They've worked with me, they've challenged me, held me to account, and rightly so. And I suppose, you know, that's the affinity that I have for communities and community action, be it the market, be it the Arm Road, be it Donegal Pass, be it anywhere else, is that they'll work with you. They want the best interests of their community, but they'll also hold you to account and be straight talking with you. And that's what I respect.
You mentioned that you had a significant birthday recently. And I know that outside of work you're in lockdown and you're doing all of that. How did you celebrate it? If you can tell me, if it was decent.
No, it was actually not a bad birthday. Yes, it was the big 4-0, and it was grand. I mean, obviously my family had made a video. You appeared in the video as well, so that was a nice surprise just from my friends and my family. There were 3 different cakes. There's a girl in the market that makes cakes, and she sent one round. My family had ordered me a cake, and then my next door neighbour, she made me a cake. She's off school obviously for the lockdown, so she made me a cake as well. So no, it was a nice birthday. Just spent at home, and a nice birthday. Like, you know, you didn't get to see everybody you wanted to, so we're going to have a party at some point in the future when we can.
Sounds like a good idea. Back to the more serious aspect of it. And I know you had very significant plans for support and developing and expanding communities, picking up on some of the ideas that were out there, creating new ideas and all of that. Unfortunately, all of that's postponed because of the pandemic. So, first of all, working with the communities now, as with them in the current situation, are there specific targets, and how difficult is it to do that work to the best of your ability?
Well, I think through this pandemic, community activists have really shone a light on themselves. Not that it was a surprise to me, but the amount of activism that's going on in our towns, in our cities, in our villages has been absolutely amazing. Communities pulling together and delivering food parcels to those who are shielding, or to families who are struggling financially. Those who are collecting prescriptions, and we've even seen that with our sporting codes as well, the GAA, rugby, soccer, other sports. Communities really saying, you know, a sense of we need to join together in order to battle this pandemic. So it's been really heartening to see that. I've always known it as somebody who's grew up in community activism my whole life. And obviously within the department, I mean, very much, I was only in January, this pandemic then struck. And it had kind of put on hold some of the initiatives that I wanted to take. But we have done some really good stuff as well. You know, the fact that we have invested to ensure that no one is rough sleeping. And we have seen that over the last number of weeks because of the investment in working with homeless organisations as well, that we have reduced homelessness in terms of rough sleeping. We have invested in communities, and I put in a COVID support fund working with councils where that investment is going in to support community organisations. And I also extended the funding for those organisations that are funded within the department to ensure that they had that security, but also had the flexibility then to, I suppose, transfer their skills in dealing with this pandemic. And you're really seeing that across the board. I think beyond that, I mean, I haven't forgot about all of the other important department work. And obviously all of that has to continue. And I think, again, I touched on this pandemic, I hope has to change how we as a society, whether globally or locally here, view how we treat the world, how we treat our communities, how we treat working families and low-income families and those who are struggling. And I think that we do have to have a different type of economics and politics and social policy as we're going forward. And it's something I've always advocated for. Getting into the department, I wanted to ensure that I embedded a rights-based approach at the heart of government, at the heart of the department. That's something that I'm still committed to do. I see issues around housing, around LGBT issues as human rights issues, women's issues as well as human rights issues. And it's through that, I suppose, lens that I want to develop programs. I think there is a big case around community wealth building. So looking at the economic disparity that is out there, and ensuring that communities who are deprived, who have maybe been neglected, that they start to feel the benefit of growth, and that, I suppose, the share of the wealth is shared more evenly within society, and where there's a focus on communities. So I want to look at community wealth building that retains that wealth within the local economy, where local communities are availing of it. I want to look at doing pilots, looking at procurement processes, and how we can look at issues of economic rights within procurement. So are you a living wage employer? If you are, you know, that should be more favourable in terms of public procurement contract, in terms of working conditions of staff. So the issues of workers' rights, economic rights, social rights, the rights of communities in the midst of regeneration, and where the interests of those communities then are central to any regeneration going forward. So all of those issues are still there. We're working behind the scene. I obviously have responsibility for a number of equality strategies, anti-poverty, child poverty, LGBT strategy, women's strategies. So we're continuing to meet. It will be more difficult because obviously I want all of those to be co-designed with the community in the time ahead. So obviously with social distancing, we're going to have to do that differently. And I think what it really shows up as well is, I suppose, poverty for communities that can't afford things like Wi-Fi, can't afford, phones or iPads, and you're even seeing that with school children maybe that are having to work from home, but maybe don't have access to the technology or can afford internet. So we need to address fundamental issues like that as well going forward. And I think in a programme for government that it has to be looking at those issues and embedding equality and a rights-based approach, because I think that improves the standard of life for everybody.
I want to finish. We've been speaking, believe it or not, for almost 40 minutes. But I want to finish with two questions. One of the things that struck me in that period of working with you, especially going through the town or even walking through the city hall, was the number of people who felt comfortable in approaching you and telling you what you should be doing. Some of it very good advice and some of it a wee bit bizarre. Does that still happen to you? I know we're in lockdown, but I mean, do people still have that? Sometimes there is a disparity between a mayor and a minister, and you don't see it and I don't see it, but sometimes people do see it. So are people still developing that kind of relationship with you and that approach? Does that still happen?
No, I think definitely. It's obviously more difficult now with lockdown, and I need to be finding new ways of communicating. Obviously, I mean, I do like contact with people. I'm a hugger, and I can't do that at the moment, obviously. But I mean, I don't have all the answers. I'm a political activist. I'm obviously a minister now in government, and I have a responsibility. But I don't have all of the answers in terms of how we deal with the complexities in which society is thrown up. So I have always believed in working in partnership with others and really having genuine collaboration. And that's why I think co-designing of government policy with communities, with people, with the various sectors and campaign groups is critical. And that's something that I'm committed very much to doing. I know that then takes longer, but I think it's worth it because we have to empower citizens in terms of being involved in deciding what their own future looks like. And the more people are engaged, I think it's better for politics in the long run in terms of this type of society, looking at the economic system, looking at the social functions, looking at how government functions, holding government to account as well in terms of the decisions it's making. The more we can work with people and empowering people to do that, I think that's better for everybody.
And the very last question, which you have to answer without a laugh or a smirk. Are you looking after yourself?
No, not as well as I should be, Joe.
Well, you need to for our sake, if not for your sake. So on that quite semi-serious note, I just want to thank you, Deirdre. I want to inform those who have joined the programme. You've been listening to Scéalta. My guest, as you can see, is Deirdre Hargey, the minister, my friend. And I want to hopefully take you down and let you have, I hope you have enjoyed the programme, which is aimed at informing and educating. So, Deirdre, thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Good seeing you.
Good to see you, as always.
Slán.